Welcome to Disaffected. I'm Joshua Slocum, and this is the show where we talk about politics, culture, and relationships through a psychological lens. It is March 9th, 2025, and you have probably seen most of the, what we would call the State of the Union address, the joint address to Congress by President Trump. And I picked out some of the highlights, some of the things that grabbed me. Yeah, it was the longest speech in, I think, presidential history in that context, maybe even the longest for him. But I watched the whole thing, and I was not bored, which is unusual. Let's get right into Trump acknowledging that nothing he can do, no matter what, will make the left happy.
This is my fifth such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure to the most devastating disease, a disease that would wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history, or the stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. And these people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what.
He's absolutely right, and it's the inverse of his famous quip about the fact that he could stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody in broad daylight and still get elected. He was right about that. He's also right about this, that what is amazing about this, what is it, hour and a half, hour and 45-minute long speech, is it was chock full of actions on issues that are what we call bread and butter and kitchen table issues. The economy, getting out illegal immigration, protecting young women in sports from boys who call themselves girls, getting rid of censorship in government, getting rid of government waste. These, until the past few insanity years, these have not generally been considered partisan things. They've been considered normal human American things. Not one time during this whole thing that I saw did any of the Democrats on their side of the aisle applaud or stand or give any indication of being pleased with any of this. I've never seen anything like this. We've seen partisanship before, but we have not seen it to this level. They are really losing it. The Democrats are completely decompensating. Let's go to clip 1 and 2, Kevin.
And we've ended weaponized government where, as an example, a sitting president is allowed to viciously prosecute his political opponent, like me. How did that work out? Not too good. Not too good.
That was great. Not too good. Not too good. And yes, I really enjoyed the fact that he's absolutely rubbing their noses in it. They're sitting there because they have to, except the ones who #resisted by walking out and things like that. They have to sit there and take it. Good. What do we have next? Yeah, this is on ending wokeness in the government.
I also signed an executive order to ban men from playing in women's sports. Three years ago, Payton McNab was an all-star high school athlete, one of the best, preparing for a future in college sports. But when her girls' volleyball match was invaded by a male, he smashed the ball so hard in Payton's face, causing traumatic brain injury, partially paralyzing her right side and ending her athletic career. It was a shot like she's never seen before. She's never seen anything like it. Payton is here tonight in the gallery, and Payton, from now on, schools will kick the men off the girls' team, or they will lose all federal funding.
As the Democrats sit there just stone-faced at this, we got that out of order. So actually, what I'm going to do is let's go back and play you the other clip talking about ending wokeness in government. Then we'll come and wrap it all together.
We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies all across the entire federal government and indeed the private sector and our military. And our country will be woke no longer. We believe that whether you are a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, or an air traffic controller, you should be hired and promoted based on skill and competence, not race or gender. Very important.
You know, all the mannerisms that used to irritate me about him, I just love them now. Comes to the end. Very important. Okay, so again, you know, without regard to race or gender, we want to hire on merit. Again, this is a normal person, normal American value. This was never partisan. There was nobody except actual bigots who stood up and said, no, I don't care how qualified you are. If you're not the right race, then you shouldn't be hired. That's new. That's not, the Democrats are all fighting the 1960s. They think they are. They think they're freedom fighters. They think they're walking across the Pettus Bridge in Alabama. They're in Selma. You know, we shall overcome. No. They are the ones who have decided today in the 21st century that if you're not the right skin color, and the only right skin color is black or brown, not white, if you're not black or brown, you should not be hired for the job. They've completely reversed. Okay, so we showed you that clip where he signed an executive order that said if schools don't prevent men and boys from competing in women's sports, they don't keep men out of women's sports, they're going to lose all federal funding. And he talked about a woman named Payton McNab. She was a 16-year-old girl at the time of the incident. But Payton McNab was left with partial paralysis on her right side when she was hit in the face by a volleyball that had been spiked over the net by a trans girl who was a boy. It hit her that hard. Democrats don't even care about this. Note that every single Democratic senator, every single one of them, voted against the bill last week that would keep boys out of girls' sports and boys out of locker rooms, okay? So I'm going to an image. I'm going to show you an image, but I need you to keep that in mind. They voted against that. They voted against protecting girls. Here they are sitting in the gallery. This is 105, Kevin. These women wearing pink for women's rights. All of these bitches voted against women and girls. You did this, bitches. And all of you too, you bastards, you men in here. But look at the hypocrisy. Look at them. They're all wearing pink. I'm surprised they don't have the goddamn pussy hats on. So I want to show you what we've talked on the show before about how the Democrats and the left, the woke left, the progressive left, are in an extended extinction burst. They're having tantrums. They're very angry because they are actually in the numerical minority now. They really are. We, normal people, we have the country. We have the government now. They're very angry about this. They are trying to make sure that woke harassment stays current. So I want to show you what the lunatic trannies and their female handmaidens, because they're always propped up by women, what they're doing to Payton McNab, that girl who was 16 years old when she was left with partial paralysis. I believe she's 21 years old now. She's in college. Payton, just this past week, new event, not the same thing from 16, but new event. Payton took some video last week of a so-called trans woman walking to the women's public restroom. And she put it online to shame that man quite appropriately for walking into the women's room. For her trouble, her college sorority, Delta Zeta, kicked Payton out the next day on behalf of a man. Now, these two personality disordered wrecks that you're about to see in video. It's a man and a woman. They're targeting Payton McNab online and calling her an abuser and a perpetrator. This girl, who was left with paralysis by being hit in the face from a spiked volleyball from a man who's trying to get men out of women's spaces, she is the abuser. This is the cluster B reversal. And as you watch this video, I want you to pay close attention to the man in this video. That's the face, the affect, and the stare of a psychopath.
In our community yesterday that is now going viral on X, specifically the Libs of TikTok account.
A cisgender woman stalked and filmed a friend of ours in the bathroom. The cis woman in question has made quite a name for herself spewing hateful and ugly rhetoric against trans women, including making appearances with Megyn Kelly on Fox News.
Her name is Payton McNab. Her sorority is Delta Zeta. She was made famous after an unfortunate volleyball accident, which a spike ball hit her in the face. The ball was spiked by a trans woman. She was then puppeted and parroted by the right-wing media and was made the one poster child of why trans women should not play sports. She has been spreading hate and misinformation since.
The fame provided by the likes of Megyn Kelly and Fox News have emboldened her beyond hate speech on the internet to purposefully stalking and recording a trans woman in the bathroom. A misdemeanor, by the way. We want to make it abundantly clear Payton McNab was the perpetrator and is now crying on the internet that she is being investigated by her school where the video was reported. Also my school, and I hope to see them take correct action and expel her.
Our friend reacted with such amazing grace, more than I would have given. When asked when she was doing there, she explained she was using the bathroom as a trans girl. And when she was pushed further, she stated sorry for Payton's discomfort, and she just wanted to be safe too.
Payton then sent the video to Libs of TikTok, who posted it at 8:28 p.m. yesterday. It now has over 9.2 million views as of the making of this video and continues to grow.
As a person using the bathroom is not the perpetrator. Trans women are not the perpetrators. Payton McNab is the perpetrator.
No, you motherfucker with a cock and balls, you are the perpetrators. Do you know, I've got to tell you, I know this probably sounds small. Listen, the linguistic uniforms I'm talking about, you may want to go back and rewind this and listen to this again. I want you to listen very carefully to the way they pronounce consonants. It's part of the linguistic uniform. They're using that, it's that little girl child way of pronunciation so that they look like fawns. They look like gentle fawns. She's doing it and he's doing it. It's things like, and she was the perpetrator too. They make their mouth really small and talk like this because it sounds more like a little kid. It is enraging. And this guy, he's giving you the psychopath stare. Okay, enough of them. Let's go back to Trump's speech. This part is on Elon Musk, the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, and how even the Democrats like what Elon is doing.
Thank you, Elon. He's working very hard. He didn't need this. He didn't need this. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Everybody here, even this side, appreciates it, I believe. They just don't want to admit that.
Boo! Boo! I'm like, wait, did we get, you know what? I can't believe I did that. I meant to have a clip for you of Representative Al Green, one of the Democrats who was heckling Trump at the beginning of the speech, standing up with his pimp cane. This is a black man, you know, who thinks he looks dapper by having everything gold and fancy, as so many of them do, shaking his pimp cane at him. He refused to sit down. And finally, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, had him ejected. But the Democrats throughout this entire thing booed, catcalled, and heckled and disrupted. I've never seen anything like this. This complete breach of decorum. Next one, here's a good one. This is a really well-delivered list by Trump of all the wasteful spending in government.
Just listen to some of the appalling waste we have already identified. $22 billion from HHS to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens. $45 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships in Burma. $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. Nobody knows what that is. $8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of.
This man is a star. He is a natural star. His comic timing is perfect. He knows exactly what he's doing. It's like he was born in front of a camera. You can like that or not like that, but he's very talented at this. He's bloody hilarious. More on the same subject. He continues with the list. This is 109, Kevin.
$60 million for indigenous peoples and Afro-Colombian empowerment in Central America. $60 million. $8 million for making mice transgender. This is real. $32 million for a left-wing propaganda operation in Moldova. $10 million for male circumcision in Mozambique. $20 million for the Arab Sesame Street in the Middle East. It's a program. $20 million for a program. $1.9 billion to recently created Decarbonization of Homes Committee, headed up, and we know she's involved. Just at the last moment, the money was passed over by a woman named Stacey Abrams. Have you ever heard of her? A $3.5 million consulting contract for lavish fish monitoring. $1.5 million for voter confidence in Liberia. $14 million for social cohesion in Mali. $59 million for illegal alien hotel rooms in New York City. He's a real estate developer. He's done very well. $250,000 to increase vegan local climate action innovation in Zambia. $42 million for social and behavior change in Uganda. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. Asia's doing very well with learning.
Yes, indeed they are. Oh my goodness. Let's just keep them rolling. Next one, Kevin, 110.
And the next phase of our plan to deliver the greatest economy in history is for this Congress to pass tax cuts for everybody. They're in there. They're waiting for you to vote. And I'm sure that the people on my right, I don't mean the Republican right, but my right here, I'm sure you're going to vote for those tax cuts, because otherwise I don't believe the people will ever vote you into office. So I'm doing you a big favor by telling you that.
He's right. He's right. And they hate that. That's what makes them so angry right now. That's what they're all sitting there. We don't have a lot of the reverse reaction shots. You can find them online, but they're all sitting there like this with their stupid little paddle signs. False. We're going to show. Yeah, we've got a couple of those to show you. They know that he's right. And they hate it. They absolutely hate it. And I love it. I love watching it. I love their misery. Here he is talking about what we needed, what the missing ingredient was that prevented us from shutting down the border and keeping out illegal aliens.
Since taking office, my administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown in American history, and we quickly achieved the lowest numbers of illegal border crossers ever recorded. Thank you. The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
Zing. Exactly correct. Now we move on to talking about law and order and restoring it.
And as we reclaim our sovereignty, we must also bring back law and order to our cities and towns. In recent years, our justice system has been turned upside down by radical left lunatics. Many jurisdictions virtually ceased enforcing the law against dangerous repeat offenders while weaponizing law enforcement against political opponents like me. My administration has acted swiftly and decisively to restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law, starting at the FBI and the DOJ. Pam, good luck. Cash, wherever you may be, good luck. Good luck. Pam Bondi. Good luck. So important.
All right. We don't have a video clip of that moment where he honored that young boy named DJ, the one with brain cancer. 13-year-old boy. He's had at least 5 operations. You see him on your screen here. He's hugging the Secret Service agent who's there. Trump brought him up. And this boy's father brought him up. The boy has terminal cancer, but he's been through at least 5 operations, and his dream is to be a police officer. And during this, Trump gave him the thrill of a lifetime by inducting him honorarily into the Secret Service. And that kid was so overwhelmed that he grabbed the Secret Service agent and hugged him when he gave him his badge. Now, I have mixed feelings about this. I don't like, as a general rule, I do not like children being featured at political events like this. There's no way to do it that does not make it seem like adult glorification. So I don't like it. I think it's generally in bad taste. However, this kid also got the thrill of his life, and his life is probably going to be short. But the Democrats couldn't even clap for him. They would not clap for him. That's how wicked and depraved they are. That's how hard their hearts have gotten. I can understand some of them saying, I don't want to be jerked around. I don't want to give an applause line because this guy's bringing out a kid. I understand that. But you know what? In the moment, for that kid there, and just for your own marketability, so that people don't think you're the psychopath that you are, it would behoove you to at least pretend that you found anything positive about that. They won't even do that. Then we get to talking about transgenderism and what it's done to our children. 114, please, Kevin.
My administration is also working to protect our children from toxic ideologies in our schools. A few years ago, January Littlejohn and her husband discovered that their daughter's school had secretly socially transitioned their 13-year-old little girl. Teachers and administrators conspired to deceive January and her husband while encouraging her daughter to use a new name and pronouns. They, them pronoun, actually, all without telling January, who is here tonight and is now a courageous advocate against this form of child abuse. January, thank you.
They didn't clap for that either, of course, because they think that's a good thing. But I have been waiting for years to hear somebody say what Trump says in this next and final clip.
Stories like this are why, shortly after taking office, I signed an executive order banning public schools from indoctrinating our children with transgender ideology. I also signed an order to cut off all taxpayer funding to any institution that engages in the sexual mutilation of our youth. And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning and criminalizing sex changes on children and forever ending the lie that any child is trapped in the wrong body. This is a big lie. And our message to every child in America is that you are perfect exactly the way God made you. Because we're getting wokeness out of our schools and out of our military, and it's already out, and it's out of our society. We don't want it. Wokeness is trouble. Wokeness is bad. It's gone. It's gone. And we feel so much better for it, don't we? Don't we feel better?
Yes, we do feel better. No child is born in the wrong body. This is a complete rout of the Democratic Party. The Republican Party under Trump has stolen every platform from the Democrats because they gave it up. They abandoned it themselves. Well, Trump picked it up. This is what the Democrats used to say. This is what they used to say about young people who didn't fit gender stereotypes. Nobody's born in the wrong body. Some kids are just born gay, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody should be abused. Until they reversed it, until they decided that every child should be abused. The Democratic Party should dissolve. This should be the end of the Democratic Party. People of goodwill who have more leftist political ideas form a new party, but destroy these people. Destroy them. End it. Dissolve the corporation. This party is over. Now, we saw how the Democrats reacted to the speech in person. Not a single one of them clapped for anything he said, even the things that allegedly would fit with their own party platform. They sat there with their nasty faces on, with their stupid auctioneer signs like this. Can we put that up, Kevin? Little paddle signs. Musk steals, protect veterans, save Medicare. Look at Pramila Jayapal back there. God, she's one of the stupidest idiots in the whole thing. Musk steals. What is he stealing? He's the richest man on the planet. What the fuck is he stealing? What does he need to steal? Everything I say bounces off me, sticks to you, or however that goes. Here's Rashida Tlaib. Stop lying to the American people with her crazy, look at her crazy faces. Stop lying, fools. You know what it is? This one. Let's put up the next graphic, please. 118, Kevin. This is a meme in real life. This woman standing there in pink. I don't know who she is, but she's holding a sign with that grim look on her face saying, "This is not normal." She is a meme in real life. She is this meme. That's not funny. So the media reacted as you would expect, with tendentious claims and talking in bad faith. Here's a sampling of the headlines. New York Times, opinion, Trump is an angry little boy on a great white horse. It's from David Brooks, of all people. Here's NPR, 6 takeaways from Trump's pointedly partisan address to Congress. Pointedly partisan, that itself is a reversal. Trump talked about everyday issues that all Americans care about: the price of food, inflation, billions of dollars in government waste, stopping medical and social child abuse, protecting young women from male violence, protecting towns and city from illegal alien criminals. It's the media and the Democrats who are pointedly partisan. Frankly, their response isn't even human. It's not just that it's partisan, it's inhuman. It's full mental derangement. Here's MSNBC. Buffoon of a president. Trump exposes ignorance of U.S. farming and speech to Congress. Yeah, like any of you sons of bitches even understand that the bread you eat comes from wheat that anybody grew. You think it just comes from a factory. You people haven't done any work in your life. Not a single one of you has done any real work in your life. You get the picture. They're so far underwater, the Democrats, that they're not even saving themselves. They don't even have a self-preservation instinct anymore. If they were smart and simply amoral and Machiavellian, they'd be getting behind Trump to save their own careers and their own networks from going out of business. Have you seen the ratings? When Joy Reid was fired from MSNBC, do you know what ratings she was getting? 59,000 viewers. We have a country of, what is it, 350 million people? Her show is getting 59,000 viewers. That's astonishing. They'd be getting behind him, to save their own careers, but they can't do it. That's how far gone they are. But the worst response came from Nicole Wallace. She is allegedly a Republican. She was George W. Bush's White House Director of Communications. And this is her response on the news to Trump honoring that 13-year-old boy, DJ, with cancer. Of all the things I have heard out of the media's mouths after this speech, this one genuinely shocked me with its moral depravity. Nicole lies. She claims that 6 cops killed themselves in a direct response to working on January 6th at the Capitol. Not true. It never happened. And I want you to listen to her. Listen to her vocal fry. Let's play it, Kevin.
But I think this was a lesson in finding one thing that you let yourself feel. And I let myself feel joy about DJ. And I hope he's alive for another,
Rachel is
95
shocked.
years, right? And I hope he lives and the life he wants to live. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. And maybe when you have childhood cancer, that crystallizes for you. And I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump's supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide. And I hope he isn't one who has to testify against the people who carried out acts of seditious conspiracy and then live to see Donald Trump pardon those people.
Yeah, I really hope that if he becomes a cop, that he doesn't end up killing himself. You foul, foul Medusa. Democrats, you are done. In the immortal words of Heather Chandler, lick it up, baby. Lick it up. All right. Coming up after the break, we are going to interview Adam B. Coleman. His new book is called The Children We Left Behind, and it comes out in April. Adam's a podcaster, an author, and a father, and he's been pushing back against woke and stumping for traditional values of responsibility and intact families. His new book is a frank call for fathers specifically to act like grown men and stay in their children's lives. He knows from very painful personal experience what father abandonment does to a child. We'll see you after the break.
Disaffected is now streaming on X. Come with us each Sunday and dare to notice reality. You can find us on X at DisaffectedPod.
Welcome back. Our guest today is Adam B. Coleman, podcaster and author. I have known Adam online for a few years. We've talked to each other by typing, but this is the first time that we've had a chance to actually talk to each other. And we're going to be talking about his new book, which is launching in April, called The Children We Left Behind. It is, I would describe it as part memoir. It does tell Adam's story of father abandonment and mental health problems and dysfunction in the family. But it also focuses on what ails our society in terms of family structure. And it's one of the few books that I have read recently, one of the few essays I've read recently, that really puts its finger on the problem of what I call adult solipsism. We claim as Americans that we care a lot about children, but as Adam writes in his book, and these are my words, not his, but we are very, very adult-centered. And when children's needs conflict with adults' desires, adults' convenience and desires often take center stage. So let's bring Adam in here. Adam, welcome to Disaffected. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
So I introduced you a little bit, but let's do the usual thing and give the audience a synopsis of who you are, where you came from, and why you wrote the book. Then we'll get into some of the detail.
Sure. So I'm an IT guy turned author, and I wrote my first book, Black Victim and Black Victor. I didn't expect much from it, and it turned into a writing career, being fortunate enough to write for the New York Post and other publications. But this book is far more personal. The reason I wrote it is because I see a massive issue in my society, and the society that we live in, when it comes to major issues. And I wanted to be able to talk about it and use my story as an example of what happens to the kids that we essentially leave behind by chasing the adult whims. I guess that's a brief way of like leading into the book, but that's exactly why I wrote it.
So to give the audience a summary of what your story is, you had a very rough time. Your father left the family when you were very, very young. You had almost no contact with him at all until a couple of aborted attempts in your adulthood, which led to some disappointment. And your mom was on her own, so single mom family. How many brothers and sisters do you have again? You mentioned
just one sister.
One sister, that's right. And you ended up at 8 years old in a mental institution, which is shocking. Could you tell us a little, how did that happen? What was this about?
So some of this was, actually much of it was stuff that I blocked out for many years. It wasn't until, I want to say maybe 8 or so years ago, my sister had brought it up in a conversation. And it was one of those things that like sudden rush of all my memories and emotions that I kind of blocked out for a long time. And also leading up to writing this book and during the process of writing this book, I finally like had like open conversations with my sister and my mother, because my sister's 4 years older than me. So they remember details that either I didn't know or with more clarity. But basically, we just got done being homeless. We were staying with a woman who was essentially a stranger, but was nice enough to give us a room in her trailer. My mom got on her feet. We got into an apartment, but by that point, we had moved from Michigan to Virginia to upstate New York in less than 2 years. I hadn't seen my father. Like, there's a lot of turmoil that was happening, and on top of being homeless. We were initially staying with a relative who was mean and threatening, so much so that my mother abruptly left. I remember getting off the school bus and my mother saying we're leaving and we had no place to go, but she wasn't going to leave her son in an abusive environment. And essentially what happened was I told my mother that I wanted to kill myself in an 8-year-old way. I told her that I wanted to get underneath the bed and hope that the bed would fall on me. And my mother actually told me last year in clarity that I told her if she loved me, she'd help me die.
I don't mind telling you when I read that, I had to put your book down for a couple minutes. It made me cry. That's no criticism, but my God. For an 8-year-old, I was suicidal at 12 or 13, but at 8, that's extreme. Do you remember? Well, you said a minute ago. Let me ask you about that. I'm curious about your subjective experience. Mm-hmm. You said a lot of these things came back to you in more detail. Your sister had reminded you, your mother did. You said you'd blocked a lot of things out. What does that mean specifically? Did you remember that you had been sent to an institution for a while? It wasn't, or did you completely have no memory of that?
I guess the best way of putting it is, if you were to ask me about it, then I probably would remember. The thing is that I purposely did not think about it. you wander in your mind, you think about all different types of stuff. I literally it was not on my mind. It wasn't anything like that. And so it was completely just stored away in my head. So when my sister brought it up and she's like, you don't remember this? And it was just like, boom, everything hit me, all the emotions that I went through. And I remember, my girlfriend at the time was sitting next to me while I'm having this conversation with my sister on the phone. And I'm just crying. Just like, it was just a rush of emotions because I remembered everything just in an instant. And I remember how I felt being in there, being confused because I didn't know where I was going. My mother didn't tell me I was going to an institution. We just got in the car and we went to this place and she handed me over to these people.
Yeah.
And, I didn't know how long I was going to be there for. And the thing I try to tell people is when you go to jail and you're sentenced, you know how long you're going to be there for. But when you go into a mental institution, you don't know. It's up to them to decide when you leave. And so when you're 8 years old and your mother comes to visit you, and I'm asking her, can we go home today? And she says, no, I'm sorry. During that call, my sister told me that every time my mother would come and visit, my mom would break down crying the entire drive home. And I never thought about my mother's perspective. I always thought about like my perspective, what I went through. And here we are both experiencing this traumatic event of being separated from each other. And meanwhile, I didn't hear from my father. I'm not even sure if he knew or if he cared or anything like that. When you're that age,
Do you have any idea whether, throughout your book, your father is very much a presence, although he was never a presence there. I mean, you evoke him and you talk about your thoughts about him, your fantasies about who he might have been, what he might have been had he stayed. So he's really kind of a strong presence in your book. Your mother is there, but she's not as strong a presence in your book, at least, to my eye reading it. Do you have any idea, did she tell your father this had happened? Would he have cared? Do you have any idea?
That's a good question. I don't think I ever asked my mom if he knew if I was in there. But the only thing I can base things on, not trying to look from, because there's a lot of times where it's like, oh, you're getting one side from your mother and stuff like that.
Right.
But if I'm to look at habitual behavior and things that I remember seeing and hearing when I was a kid and his demeanor, and then talking to my mother, which having conversations with my mother was like, in many ways, she defends him. Okay. Which kind of pissed me off, to be honest with you. Yeah. Right. In many ways, she defends him and she understands him. So she's not your father's terrible. I think there's very few times that my mother ever said anything negative about my father, and plenty of times that she could have. Okay. But the times that my father did come around or tried to interact with me, it felt like my mother was the one who was pushing him. Yeah. If my father would be on the phone, I felt like my mom was saying, you want to talk to your kids? So she was the one, and her regret is that she didn't do more of it, talking to her. But she did do some of it. She never, I guess the biggest part for me as a father today, if I care about my kids, I'm doing everything I possibly can to be in their life. So as long as my mother wasn't a hindrance to my father, then I put way more on my father taking the lead to be involved in our lives. And so when he would come into town, my mom, he would stay with us when he would come into town. Okay. He'd do that maybe once a year, if that. And he would spend most of the day in New York City trying to get fabric because he was a tailor. But he wasn't spending it with us. He wasn't like, cool, it's Tuesday, we're going to take you out and do X, Y, and Z. I don't remember ever doing much of anything with my father when he would come and visit. And that became very evident. We were just there. We weren't the reason why he was coming. We were just the pit stop.
Yeah, understood. I made a couple of notes here. There's a couple of things I want to bring up with you about the book. Mm-hmm. Like I said to you a couple of minutes ago, your book, The Children We Left Behind, is the only one I can remember reading recently, really at all, that talks about and this is my word, I know you don't use this word necessarily, but I see it as the narcissism of modern parenting, the self-centeredness. Yeah. I really, the fact that the adult's convenience in the relationship there, you've talked about how too many parents, when they think about whether to stay together or to separate, they are thinking primarily about how they feel about their adult romantic relationship with this person. And what the children need is secondary to that, if it comes into it at all. I've got a quote here from your book that I want to read. It says, "As an abandoned child, I've watched the adults in the West make the family unit about themselves, solely hinging on the relationship success or failure with their spouse, rather than being motivated for the betterment of their children. The same attitude of parental neglect that my father showed toward his children is more common than we'd like to admit." Can you pick that up and expand on it?
Yeah, absolutely. When you hear phrases from people that are that people repeat often, the most common one is, "If I'm happy, my children will be happy," which is a rationalization because they know they're about to tear this kid's world apart. Because from a child's perspective, all they have are their parents. They have nothing else, right? All their friends, when they're young, they don't have a friendship circle. They're not developed there. So when your kid's 5 years old or younger, especially, like, you're all they got. And when they see their father every day, that to them is consistency. It's normal for them. And when they separate, that causes all different types of emotions for the kid, confusion, because children don't have developed brains. They can't see around the corner. You can't completely reason with them. And they can't understand. They don't have experience to know, well, some relations don't work, right? They want to know, did I cause this? Yeah. Is it my fault? How come I only see dad every other week? Is it because he doesn't love me? Like, these are the types of things that run through a kid's mind. And we always try to look from an adult lens. Well, of course they understand that our relationship just didn't work out. No, they don't.
No, they don't. They don't even know what a relationship not working out means. They don't even know what that concept is. Because what could that mean to them? The only thing it could mean is a version of your experience with your father, which is that he just walked away.
Exactly.
It's so,
or as simple as, mommy and daddy don't love each other anymore, which is a detrimental thing for a kid to even conceive.
Yes. Yeah, I hear that a lot. It upsets me. I think we have culturally glorified single motherhood in a way that is inexcusable. And we've done this, I believe, to salve the egos of single mothers, wanting, and some of it is motivated by wanting to be understanding, wanting to be supportive. But as with so many other things that have gone to excess in our society that have to do with what we call empathy, we end up empathizing and sympathizing with people who really have not shouldered their responsibility. We make excuses for them. And we have this entire cultural conversation about, I don't remember if you said this specifically, but there were a few times in the book where you mentioned it's almost as if we make a heroine out of a single mother or a hero out of a single father. I mean, there are very few single fathers, actually. This is largely a single mother. It's usually the man who walks away and the woman who stays with the children. And, as you say in your book, no. They're not superheroes. No, they're not being both mom and dad. They can't do that. They're not, even if they want to, even if they genuinely want to, they are not giving their children what they need because they can't as one person. And
exactly.
Why do we, Adam, you remember, we talked about, there used to be a phrase, when I was a kid, I think I'm about 10 years older than you, people would talk about divorce, and part of the conversation was, well, we stayed together for the kids. And what I heard, because I came from an abusive household with a violent father who we wanted out of the house. He was a stepfather, wanted out of the house, and he needed to be out of the house because he was dangerous. That was the only lens I had. Like, I was like, oh, please kick him out of the house, right? So I didn't understand when adults would talk about we stayed together for the children. I was like, well, you shouldn't have. But I only knew one very violent experience. I don't even hear people. Well, it's almost as if when somebody says we think maybe we need to stay together for the children, society's there to say, oh no, girl, oh no, you're not living your best life. Don't settle for second best, right?
Exactly. And that could only happen if you see men as optional. See, men are just pieces that you can pick up. And when this piece no longer fits, then you just pick up another one that fits you better. We can just toss men out and toss another man in, get rid of the original father, get the upgrade later on. I mean, that's the type of mentality that we see today. And so that if you have that idea that if you mess this up, you can get something better, then why would you approach family planning with purpose? Why would you even see it as important, right? If men are just optional pieces, why even exist? Why even exist having fathers within the home? Because they're just optional anyways. And what is the purpose of a father? Is he just to be some pay pig? Well, you make your own money. You have your own job. You don't need him, right? Or you can just siphon the money from the government, right? And they'll take his cash and give it to you because that's all he's there for. And it's this constant minimization of men and fathers. And it would be absurd if I, as a man, said, well, the only reason that mothers are necessary is so they can give birth. So if I can get an incubator and give birth to a kid, what do I need a mother for? And it's the same type of mentality.
I know, I know, and I wish. I mean, I'm sorry to say though that we're there too. We're all the way there too, Adam. Look at the conversation about surrogacy, right? I need somebody. I need a womb to give birth to, but then I'm going to take the baby with my partner. We're two strangers who aren't genetically or familially necessarily tied to this baby. And, I mean, people talk about this in public as if there's nothing to be ashamed of when what they're doing is consciously and deliberately creating a new life with the intention of depriving the child of its natural mother and in many cases, its natural father. They know they're doing it. So we are, I'm afraid, at the point where we are starting to see mothers as also dispensable and disposable.
Right. And it comes down to, and this is like the weird time in our history where the things that were basic and everybody understood, that men are men and women are women, right? That mothers and fathers are necessary for different reasons, that men are stronger than women. Like, these are basic things that even little kids can understand. We're now coming to the point where we are questioning the necessity of a mother and what her real function is. And we're questioning the purpose of having a father around children and what the necessity of having him around is. And if I could sort of pivot a little bit, I think much of the problem is because our natural desire as children is to appease our parents. And so if our parents act recklessly, put us in terrible situations, put us in situations where a step parent comes in and can be abusive, like what you said in for your childhood, to leave us constantly vulnerable. And then when we become adults, we're just supposed to celebrate them and say, well, I turned out fine. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
It's such a lie. You didn't turn out fine. I mean, you've made great progress, but you did not turn out fine. I mean, the emotional pain, the lack of emotional development and maturation that took you much longer than it would have if you'd come from a stable family is something all of us share who come from dysfunctional families. But you had to work and claw to get to the place of quasi-normal that people who come from stable families take for granted and may not notice as they're developing into it. You talked a lot in the book about how you had shut your emotions down. We all react differently. I was always an emotionally expressive kid. I cried at the drop of a hat. I was afraid of it. You always knew what my emotions were. You, however, turtled up. You described yourself as saying, "I'm fine." You were quiet. You didn't make a lot of eye contact. You didn't talk about anything deeply. It seemed to me that you really had put a calcified shell around yourself for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it took me until recently to understand why that's the case. And it goes back to when I was put into that mental hospital. And even my sister said, like, after that, you were different. And I think the lesson that I took from that was that sharing your emotions can get you locked up.
Yeah.
And that made me afraid to share with anybody how I was going through. Now, I sometimes wear my emotions on my sleeve. Like, you can tell if I'm depressed, you can tell if I'm upset, but relatively speaking, I'm very like straight and narrow. And it's hard to sometimes get a complete read on me. And I think I developed that so I could hide how I was truly feeling. I think there are things that are within this book, especially talking about suicidality, that my mother doesn't even know about. Like, she doesn't know how much I was struggling. She doesn't know I was contemplating it when I had moved out of state and, just shortly after having my son. Like, she doesn't know the struggles that I was having. She doesn't know how much I hated myself or how much I was depressed. I was gaining wild amount of weight. I was over 300 pounds and living in my friend's basement. Like my life wasn't going well, but I did not necessarily reveal that to her because I was afraid. I was afraid of what happens if I share my emotions again.
Right, understandably. Well, you have a grown son now, and you have a wife that you are happily married to. So, I'm not going to talk about happy endings or bad endings, but you've made progress and you have some really good things in your life, which I'm glad to read about. As we wrap this up here, I know you can't solve the problem. You're not going to have a one-sentence prescription for what society needs to do. But if in summary, what would you like to see us do in society in terms of how we do family that is different from what you experienced?
So it depends who it is. If you haven't started a family yet, you need to be very honest about how you approach family planning. We need to actually take that term to mean something serious, family planning. It's something that you think about before you start a family. Yeah. That also includes the type of partner that you're getting with. And so you attract what you are, right? If you're a suffering person, you're going to get someone who's equally suffering, right? So you need to improve yourself. You need to work on yourself. This is part of the family planning. I ended up with a great wife because I did all of this work to be a better person, to deserve this type of person that I'm with. Whereas years ago, when I was suffering and struggling, I had terrible relationships. And I'm actually glad I didn't have children with these particular people because it would have been highly tumultuous and it wouldn't have been proper family planning. So I think that if you're someone who hasn't started a family, you need to, consciously think about improving yourself and how you want to have a family. What do you want that family to look like? If you're someone who already has children, you need to look back at yourself and say, are you doing the best that you can for your child? Not for you, not for what you want in the future, but for your child. And having the biggest house or making the most money is not necessarily the best thing for your kid, right? What is their relationship with you? Are you taking the time to take them out? Are you spending time with them? Because I'll tell you, especially for kids who are disruptive, who are acting out, you know what they want the most? Their parent. That's what they want the most. And they're acting out because they don't know how to express that to you. So, there's different prescriptions for different people. And if you're someone who's like myself, who's a lost child, the thing I would say is you're not alone. And I think it's important to understand that you're not the only one who has gone through this, and you can make it out of it. If I can do it, if I can put in a certain amount of work to overcome these obstacles, then I think anybody can do these things. But you just have to, one, have hope. And I think without hope, that's when there is no progress. There is no point to even trying to change.
Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did do that work, and I'm glad you ended up where you are and that you're doing the work you're doing now. When is the book coming out?
It'll be out officially April 1st.
Okay. And where can people find you online? Because you work in various media. You do podcasting. You're an author. You have a Substack. Where can they find you?
Yeah, they could definitely find me. I have a YouTube channel that I'm trying to grow, youtube.com/wrong_speak. Also on X at the same handle at wrong_speak. And I have a Substack, adambcoleman.substack.com, that I write articles there as well. Occasionally, I do some TV and go in different publications.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I see you in the New York Post sometimes. I'm going to say your handle again for the audio listeners. It's at wrong_speak. Wrong_speak. That's how you can find Adam. Adam, thanks very much for taking the time to tell us about this. Congratulations on your upcoming book launch. And I'll look forward to seeing more success from you.
Thank you, and likewise. I'm a big fan, so it's a long time coming.
Thanks. I'm glad we got to do this. We should talk again. Let's do it again.
Absolutely.
Disaffected is sponsored this week by the letter B for biltong. I've always wanted to do this Sesame Street style. Do you remember every episode would be sponsored by the letter A, the number 3, etc.? What is biltong? It's the finest cured meat that you are ever likely to taste. Our sponsor at Biltong USA makes this delicious South African way of curing high-quality beef, venison, other kinds of game. It's spiced, it's vinegar cured. It is absolutely delicious. And it's a really healthy snack. No carbohydrates, got lots of good animal protein in it. I eat this stuff constantly through the week when I'm writing. Check out biltongusa.com, and when you're there, not only can you look through their extensive selection of different kinds of biltong, but they also have a nice little offering of European and British style groceries. So if you're an expat, you live in somewhere, you live in here in the United States, you want a little taste of home, you can get that from the folks there too. Thank you, Anton at Biltong USA, and don't forget to use our promo code because it gets you 10% off and it lets Anton know that you heard about his product on our show, and that code is Josh or Josh10. Apparently either of them work and they will get you 10% off your order. Thanks, and we'll see you after the break.
Disaffected is now streaming on X. Come with us each Sunday and dare to notice reality. You can find us on X at DisaffectedPod.
We're going to do some viewer feedback, both positive and negative. Gil has, Guillhez, left a comment under last week's show. He says, he or she, a trick in the sleeve of every personality disordered person I've been noticing a lot lately is what Zelensky does when he responds to when Trump says, you don't have the cards. This is a discussion about the meeting between Trump, Ukraine, Zelensky, and Vice President J.D. Vance. Back to the comment. Zelensky says, I'm not playing cards. When Trump says, you don't have the cards, Zelensky says, I'm not playing cards. Our commenter says, this is what I call willfully misunderstanding an idiom or figure of speech. Obviously, Trump was not talking about card games, but the personality disordered people love to play around with literal and metaphorical meanings, switching them around at breakneck speed. The way it works is as follows. When you use a metaphor or an idiom, the personality disordered person will willfully misunderstand your meaning and immediately assume you are being literal. This is a great opportunity for them to either misconstrue your argument or take offense to what you said. That's a really good point. I've noticed it too. I'm not actually sure in this case. English is this guy, definitely not this guy's first language. It is possible that he had not heard the idiom about cards. But he's very obviously personality disordered anyway. And you see that a lot. That's not what I'm doing. Yeah, I know it was a figure of speech. Manipulative people pretend they don't know that. Now, we have an extra out this week. I want to remind you make sure, please, a couple of things. Number one, make sure you're subscribed to us on YouTube. Please hit the subscribe button. And when you do that, it's going to ask you which kind of notifications you want. Don't choose personalized. You can't know what that means. And I tried it once. It means that you will sometimes get notifications and you sometimes won't. Choose all notifications. Why? Well, because we had an extra audio episode this week. And I've only seen half the normal viewership, and I'd like to see everybody on it. I sat down with Dr. Mark McDonald, a family psychiatrist, to talk about borderline and narcissistic personality disorder spreading through society and feminism. We talked about feminism running amok, how there are no boundaries on women's behavior any longer, and how men are accused of basically doing something approaching physical violence whenever we mention this. We've got a clip for you here. Mark tells a story about one patient he had. It's illustrative.
I had a patient who had a borderline personality disorder and came in, and I felt very sympathetic to her at first because she was very charming. She was very attractive. I saw her 4 times a week in analysis, and very seductive, which is also very common with borderline women.
Very, very common. Yep.
They boost your ego. They tell you how wonderful you are. You're the only person who understands me.
They're often very, very hot.
This woman was very, very hot.
Yep.
I still remember her clearly because of the emotional tractor beam that she launched in my direction the moment she came in the door. And I felt immediately very sympathetic to her condition, having been objectified, mistreated, cruelly used and thrown away, not just by 1, 2, or 3, but by every single boss she had.
Or every
all
boss?
Male. Every boss, which was always a man, in the last 10 to 15 years. And what a horrible, horrible series of unfortunate events that befell her, landing underneath these pigs that just took advantage of her and refused to acknowledge her contributions to the company and just saw her as a piece of meat to be eaten and discarded. How horrible and awful. Poor thing. Until I raised the question, and I just raised it as a question of exploration from the point of view of the therapist to the patient, because of a few things that I was starting to notice about her story that just didn't seem to pan out. I asked her the question, have you ever considered that there might be something that you're doing to encourage this sort of treatment and behavior that you experienced under all of these bosses? Well, the moment I said that, her whole demeanor changed. The sweet, kind, loving, appreciative woman who could only receive assistance from me, the expert analyst and therapist who understood her like no other, that demeanor changed. And immediately, I could see it in her body, her face, her tone of voice. I became the embodiment of all of those men that had been abusing her and using her over the past 15 years. I became the next boss.
How did she react to you? Do you remember enough about that?
I remember her face clenching. I remember her body stiffening. I remember her tone becoming scowling and accusatory. And she made intimations that I was trying to seduce her as a doctor and take advantage of her as a patient.
Okay, so if you want to see the whole thing, check it out on YouTube, but it's also on audio podcast. Remember, subscribe to us on your podcast player. Every episode of the show that has video to it also goes out as an audio-only episode on your podcast platform, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, iTunes, whether they call it iTunes or not, it's all there, but we could definitely use your numbers as subscribers on there too. And we're going to have another one coming out next week, this longer conversation with our guest from a few weeks ago, Kate Wan. This audio episode got more pushback and accusations from angry women than any other episode that I can remember. It was still a minority overall. It wasn't like a huge but the percentage, the rate of angry comments was more than I ever remember receiving. One longtime viewer sent a quite nasty email to me, actually, at my consulting email address, saying that I and my guest were both misogynists. Here's a sample. Your podcast sounded as hysterical and unhinged as those witches on The View. Next one. But to hear that it's a man's job to control the emotionality of women, to hear bitch, pussy, and tits, to listen to the most raging demonstration of genuine dislike of women was truly sickening. Your guest's contention that most borderlines are women is almost laughable. Viewer, I mean, I know, well, you claim you're not listening anymore, but I've heard that before and you all come back. So I know you're listening to this. Mark McDonald is a psychiatrist. He knows the statistics. He is a professional. It's not laughable. You are not. He knows what he's talking about. Most borderlines who are diagnosed are women. Sorry. She finishes up with, don't blame the misery of our current world on women. Their, quote, power or, quote, authority is largely tokenistic. It's still men slaughtering generations of other men in the meat grinder of war. It's still men causing the vast majority of murders and rapes and pedophilia and sex trafficking. What's wrong with them? Seriously, maybe it's cluster B. Write your own one-liners, honey. Don't steal mine. Love you too. Mwah. So find out what a horrendous misogynist troglodyte I really am by listening to that episode today. And remember to subscribe to us. I got one more. This comment was left. It was too illustrative. I had to pluck it out for you. Francis says, feminism is what got the vote for women. Feminism is what allowed women to get birth control and be allowed to get into the workplace. Feminism is the reason why gay people like Joshua can actually be gay in public. Feminism is the reason women have rights. You see the problem here because feminism did some good things, allegedly. It therefore cannot have ever done any bad things. It's black and white thinking. It's borderline style thinking, actually. And this is also very like my mother. Feminism gave you what you have. Feminism lets you be gay in public. My mother would say, how dare you criticize me? I gave you life. It's just female emotional blackmail. Let's end the show on something fun. You've probably seen this obnoxious video of a group of young adult women in an office getting off on how cute they are.
Gen Z boss enemy! Gen Z boss enemy! Itty bitty cheese and a ball! Itty bitty cheese and a ball! 5'3" in an attitude! 5'3" in an attitude! Secret product in the trench! Secret product in the trench! New friend green and a sneaky link! New friend green and a sneaky link! Fake 10 hands in a hoop! Fake 10 hands in a hoop! Gen Z boss enemy! Gen Z boss enemy!
Okay, we can stop now.
Itty bitty cheese and a ball! 5'3" in an attitude! 5'3" in an attitude!
Can you bring that down, please, Kevin? People are trying to talk up here. Now, you know, what I thought of immediately was, we must increase our busts. To be fair, these girls were probably just having fun in an office in a silly, goofy way. There's really nothing wrong with it in isolation, but this behavior is not isolated to goofing off anymore. And too many women, young women, but older women, really do think they're boss bitches, badasses, and that they run the world. And that's what makes an otherwise cute video so annoying. And you think I'm exaggerating. This kind of stuff doesn't just happen in these cutesy one-offs. You think I'm blowing up a fun friends moment into something it's not. Take a look at these fully grown women, Democratic representatives in Congress, who put out this video this week titled, Choose Your Fighter. For those of you on audio, they're women standing in front of the Capitol, bouncing up and down like boxers, punching the air. Oh my God. Idiots. Good God. For God's sake, Representative Catherine Clark looks like she's bouncing up and down on a marital aid. Woman, you are 61 years old. Women, sort yourselves out. Choose my fighter. Unbelievable. Oh, hey, disinfectants. I got you something special. Your favorite. A congresswoman with lots and lots of ghetto.
Oh no!
It's a cultural divide. I'm gonna get it on the floor.
You really about to do it?
40 acres in the mule. This is bigger than the music.
You really about to do it?
Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
They get on it like that.
Hey, I'm tripping, I'm sliding, I'm riding through the back like buck. busted on a beat, bro. Deep out in the rap, he a freak.
Oh my God.
Man down, turn like ember lamps. Tell him breathe. Let them boys to the cross, they walk around like
Unbelievable.
thieves.
Well, that gives me a really good segue to my final little treat for you. Somebody posted this picture on Substack and asked people to caption it. It's some birds talking to each other, and it looks like one bird is gossiping with the other. And they said, come up with a caption. So I did. And it's this. Kevin, you need to come back to me. This is a full visual and audio impression. See, what had happened is that hoe over there talking about she was going to come up and talk to my man. And I was like, oh, shoes. All right, that's the show. But before we go, we'd like to ask for your help. If you want to talk to us during our once a month meetups for members, we have them every Saturday, first Saturday of the month, and they're for paying subscribing members who support us monthly. So take a look at us over at Substack, disaffectedpod.substack.com or subscribestar.com/disaffected. We really, really appreciate it. It helps us to pay for this studio. It puts food on our table, and we like talking to you too. And you'll get an invitation to our members-only Discord where we have lots of fun chats. And if you don't want to do it monthly, we understand that. But if you like what you get here, if you get something here that you don't get somewhere else, and I think Kevin and I do bring you something you're not going to get somewhere else, would you throw a little money in the kitty for us, please? Just give a one-off donation. Go to disaffected.com and click on support us. And finally, don't forget to follow us on X/Twitter because we put up short clips of the show throughout the week. That's it. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.